So in addition to collaboration, I believe that humility is important. That is, good leaders have to be able to learn from other people. They need to learn from their subordinates, from their peers. They need to learn from markets. So humility is important.
In the last year, entrepreneurs and executives have had to change quickly, adjusting to running their businesses as usual during some extremely unusual times. It's been a lot, it's been a hard, but in the long term, these challenges are likely to make a lot of business owners and executives stronger. Hello and welcome to the Honest Talk by Freak Folks. I'm Harsh Pandey. For this particular session, we have with us very special guest today, Dr. Wayne Brockbank, sir. He's a clinical professor of business at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. At the Ross School of Business, Dr. Brockbank is a core instructor of the Advanced Human Resource Executive Program. He is the director of a strategy organization executive program in India and in United Arab Emirates. Over the past 30 years, these executive programs have been constantly rated as the best HR executive program in the United States and Europe by the Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and the Leadership Excellence. He has been on the visiting faculty at the university in Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Australia, China, Indonesia, Hungary, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, India, Korea, and the Czech Republic. He has been acknowledged as one of the top 20 global HR thinkers by HR Most Influential. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, his profile has so many things, so many glories, which I won't be able to explain in the next few minutes. But I'm pretty sure during this conversation, we are going to learn a lot from him. Today, he will be joining us all the way from United States. So first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm one of the things that I'm most grateful for in my entire career is that if this were being done in person, if we didn't have the pandemic, I would be doing this hopefully in person.
Exactly.
But this would be my, 146th trip to India. Before the pandemic, I was at about 125, but I've done over 20 webinars now in India. So I spent a lot of my career in India, and it's been one of the great blessings of my life. And I have many wonderful colleagues and friends whom I value and deeply appreciate. And this is an honor for me to be with you and hopefully share some of the ideas that I've gleaned both from my exposure to worldwide practices of leadership and HR and organization, but also the application hopefully I can bring to bear in the subcontinent of India.
Thank you so much, sir. It's actually our pleasure too, and you are very kind to us. So moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is embracing the one constant in business change. Management and leadership are not titles or states of being, are you a leader or manager? These are dynamic moods and behaviors. While there is a difference between the two moods, neither mood is or should be exclusive one for any single person. So my very first request to you is please explain to our viewers, in your opinion, what are the key ingredients of a strong leadership and effective management?
Well, there have been literally hundreds and thousands of studies that have been done on leadership. And there's a lot of there's some consistency, there's a lot of inconsistency. And some of the inconsistencies are so dramatic that you have to look at them as something that needs to be considered. For example, Elon Musk at Tesla, if you were to have a checklist of his leadership skills, you'd probably say this guy is doomed for disaster. He's impatient, he's judgmental, he's erratic, he has failed to build a leadership background. In the last 3 years, 3 of his primary successors have all quit or been fired. So one would argue that if you had a checklist of leadership competencies, Tesla or Elon Musk would probably be at the bottom. But on the other hand, he's overseeing one of the most fabulous success stories in the history of the last 100 years in business. So you have these really important exceptions to the rules that we normally think define what makes a good leader. See, so there's a conundrum that that in reality, we can guess what we think makes a good leader, but the research would tell us we don't know. So I'll give my best guess. And one example would be, they have to have the ability to look into the future. They have to have the ability to understand the social, technological, and human trends that are occurring, and figure out what they're going to do within their businesses to make their companies more successful than their competitors. The ultimate goal of leadership is to create an organization that can create sustainable value in its markets. And sustainable value means creating positive cash flow over the long run. If leaders do not create organizations that create cash flow, then nothing else they do matters. Because if they haven't created cash flow is the way society tells the leaders and the company if they're fulfilling their purpose. That is, the purpose of an organization is defined by the customers. It's not defined by the leaders. If the leaders say this is your purpose and the customers say no, that's not your purpose, then you have a disconnect. So leaders must be capable of creating an organization that can create positive cash flow. If they do nothing else, then that's a good start. So that's the number one characteristic that an effective leader has to have. He needs to be able to see into the future and define the capabilities that organization needs to have to meet the needs of their customers better than their competitors. So that's number one. And that's so far distant from anything else that everything else is not inconsequential, but is not as relevant as this first one. Then there's a whole series of competencies and capabilities that leaders need to have. They need to exhibit some level of the ability to create collaboration. They need to collaborate both down, across, and up. They need to be able to make the organization whole greater than some of the parts by getting the pieces to work together, both within teams and across divisions. And that's critical for success. But there are some firms, you have like Elon Musk, he's the exception. His style of collaboration, we wouldn't say is very effective, and yet his company is very effective. So in addition to collaboration, I believe that humility is important. That is, good leaders have to be able to learn from other people. They need to learn from their subordinates, from their peers. Right. They need to learn from markets. So humility is important. Third, they need to have the ability to focus on the most important things and let the less important things take a back burner. So they need to have the ability to decide what is most important and to ignore some of the things that are less important. So those are, and the list could go on and on. Should they be aggressive or not aggressive? Should they be agile? Not right now. Agility is one of the flavors of the month. So we'll maybe talk more about agility in the context of this discussion. So,
sure, sir, definitely. I think you have shared many important things, and I'm very happy that you have shared with all those actually what are the needed traits to be a good leader. And there can be exceptions as well. You have focused this point, and I really liked it. And I'm sure the viewers, those who are watching this session, they also going to find this insightful. So my next question to you is, what we have seen is, as we have moved on to this 21st year of this 21st century and passing through these very unprecedented times, The way we do business has changed. We now operate in an environment that can be very aptly described as VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The pace of change is getting faster, organizations are flatter, customer demands are ever increasing, competition is global, and continuous disruptions are now considered our new normal. Sir, in your opinion, what is needed to survive and thrive in such a VUCA world?
That's a great question, and you summarize the challenges very well. So I appreciate your framing of those. Within that context, the single most important thing for leaders and organizations to remember is that the fundamental job of business, the fundamental role of business, is to meet the requirements of customers better than the competition. At one level, business is not that complex. That focus has to be in place, or you won't, or you'll fail. So the critical issue is to remember that entire focus that is shared throughout the organization on what the company needs to do to design, manufacture, and deliver products or services better than the competition is what it's all about. And that will vary from company to company. For Apple, the key issue is innovation. For Walmart, Flipchart, it's being low cost. For Amazon, it's mastering distribution channels. For Google, it's mastering distribution channels, but they're not distributing stuff, they're distributing information. For some companies, service is the most critical. You might think about Ritz-Carlton as the most continually rated high-performing organization from a service stamp, hotel performing organization in the world. Although I do very much value the Taj hotels. I've stayed in a lot of those, and they're wonderful. So different organizations have different. I need to also mention quality. Toyota has competed on the basis of quality. The gap between Toyota and its competitors has narrowed, but consistently Toyota competes on the basis of quality, and because of that, its market share is absolutely phenomenal. Market capitalization relative to the standard automobile companies in the United States is substantially greater. So organizations and leaders need to focus on what they need to do, the capabilities they need to develop to beat the competition better, or to meet the requirements of customers better than the competition. And at one level, that's not that complicated. But sometimes companies get pulled off into different flavors of the month. They think we're going to do this, we're going to do that,
Yes.
and they sometimes can lose that focus. So that's the most important critical issue, to have that decided focus on understanding what the competition is doing, what you need to do better than the competition in order to get customers to do business with you instead of to your competitors. Now, how do you do that? And I'm not. I'll let you ask some additional questions. I think I'll save those answers for later questions.
Sure, definitely, sir. Sir, my next question to you is, the business world has changed dramatically over the last few decades, and now we are living in a connected society where change can be fast-paced, constant, and unpredictable. As you have mentioned, rapid advance in technology have created an environment where the internet, smartphone, and social media are ubiquitous, and the 2008 global financial crisis and this 2020 pandemic has increased the sense of turbulence, danger, and unpredictability in certain areas. Sir, in your opinion, what are the critical skills required to excel in this fast-paced changing world?
Now that's a complicated question. The bad news is it's a complicated question. The good news is, I believe, I have a close friend that I worked with for a number of years, who frames the challenge this way. He's one of the world's leading and most effective investment professionals.
Okay.
He says the way to think about what's happening in the world of change is there's two primary dimensions. We're finding in geopolitical economic settings that there's enormous change, but that's on the base of geography. China is expanding out. It's threatening countries on its borders. It's creating this Silk Road to Europe and into northern and central Africa. So China is expanding. India is expanding too. You know, there's more CEOs probably around the world from India than from any other country. India is a hotbed of executive talent literally around the world. So it's expanding. The United States, on the other hand, is pulling into itself. You know, we thought we were focusing, we had too much of an internal focus with Donald Trump, and then we have Joe Biden, and it's becoming even more insular and internally focused. Same thing's happening in the UK. Germany's kind of shutting down now so we see all these geopolitical dynamics that are occurring. Some are expanding and some are growing. The point is there's enormous amounts of change on a geographic basis. At the same time, the second dimension is sector change. So we're seeing enormous changing in the nature of competition within sectors. You know, General Motors and Ford and Chrysler and were very successful, as were the German companies, and even the Japanese automotive companies. But then all of a sudden, their competition is not each other. Now their competition is Google,
yes,
and Tesla. You know, Walmart was, for the last 20 years, has been one of the most effective organizations in the world, most successful companies in the world. And now Amazon is chomping at the bit, waiting to take them on, and is doing so very successfully. So sectors are changing and merging and pulling apart and recombining. So now you take all the changes on a sector level that are occurring, and you overlap the changes that are occurring on a geographic basis, and those changes are constantly moving, and those changes on a geography and sector level create pockets of opportunity.
yes,
And that's the critical issue to recognize, that those pockets of opportunity, as you point out, will come into existence, but they'll go out of existence very quickly. So the speed of your ability to get in, to recognize what's going on, to analyze what's going on, to create organizations that can respond to what's going on, and to execute, those are the critical steps of success within the turbulence that you talk about. You have to go in, leverage competitive advantage, make a bunch of money, then pull out before the window of opportunities close. Okay.
Thank you, sir. I think actually you have explained this very beautifully. So my next question to you is, what we have seen, a new way of working has emerged, as you have mentioned, from the post-industrial age into digital one, and with it, the need of new leadership. So what are your views on the demanding leadership of this new age? How will it going to be?
Oh, I have to tell you a story.
Okay.
Just before the pandemic broke out, my daughter and I signed up to run the Disney half marathon in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
So and now I was in Abu Dhabi, and I flew in for this event, and I showed up at my hotel in the Wilderness Lodge about 2:00 in the morning, and there was a man, and the lobby was empty, and and it was very interesting. And it's the first time I've ever been in a Disney resort where the lobby was empty, except for the man at the registration desk. He was from it. As it turns out, he was from India.
Okay.
So my daughter and I were registering, and I, as I always do with Disney employees, I always ask, so how much do you like your job? What do you like about your job? He said, oh, I love my job. I have the best job in the world. And I looked around the lobby, said, but there's nobody here. It's 2:00 in the morning, and you say you're enjoying your job? He said, oh, I love my job. I said, really? Why do you love your job? He's because I don't have a boss. I don't have a manager. I don't have somebody looking over my shoulder all the time, asking me stupid questions, not creating value, telling me what to do, and I already know what to do. So I love my job because I can come to work, I can get my job done, I can make my customers happy, I can get the work that's expected of me, and then I can go home at the end of the shift. So he's very happy because, in fact, he didn't have a leader. He didn't have a manager looking over his shoulder. Yes. So one of the things to recognize for an effective leader in the context of this change is you need to recognize when people need leadership and when they don't need leadership. And sometimes the best thing that a leader can do is to leave a competent, motivated, informed worker alone and let them do their job. Okay.
Exactly.
That's number one. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now the other question is, so what are the other things that a leader might do in this context that you've described so elegantly and so effectively? I find obviously many more people are working at home in the past now than in the past. That's going to give a mandate that leaders are going to have to be much, much, much more effective at listening.
Okay.
As we know historically, there's tons of research that say a good proportion, some estimate up to 90% of communication occurs non-verbally, with picking up non-verbals. But now in today's world, when you're working at home, you can't pick up the non-verbals because at best you're in Zoom, but you can't see a lot of the non-verbals. If people turn their head away to look, are they scowling? Are they smiling? You don't know. So leaders must therefore be capable of listening to the nuances in what is being said and how it's being said, the sincerity with which it's being said. So listening is going to become much more critical in the future.
Indeed, sir.
Another factor that's going to be very interesting is how to select the next generation of leaders.
Yes.
Based upon evaluating current performance.
Right.
Let me give an example. It used to be that if a leader would, if an individual manager had a high potential person on her staff, what she'd do is she'd go around and say, how are things going? And talk, show me what you're doing. Have you thought about approaching that problem this way? What are the resources? Let me see what I can do to help you think through and grow and develop. Okay. And now when you're online, that's much more difficult to do. You just can't walk around and take the opportunity when it presents itself to work with a high potential individual to grow and develop. So the opportunities we call that management by walking around. We call it on the spot coaching or mentoring. Those opportunities are much less likely to occur. So the question is, how will leaders be able to identify, coach, and mentor their high potential employees better in the future? And there's no one answer, but we do know that leaders will have to spend more time thinking through how to interact with their high potential employees so they don't lose them. Another factor is that they'll need to also be much more aggressive and focused on encouraging the right behavior. For example, about 3 years ago, I had the opportunity of visiting with a very senior executive, one of the top 5 executives at one of the most effective financial institutions in the world, located in New York City. And I had a very interesting discussion with that individual. I said, so what makes you so effective? And now I would apply his answer to what's happening today. So he said, it's easy. 20 years ago, I was a junior analyst in this company. And I had made to be honest, he said, I made a brilliant decision. And so at that time, his company the bosses in that company could hand out spot bonuses. If you did something really brilliant, the manager could call you in and say, here's a bonus. In this case, his boss called him in and said, boy, what you did was really, really smart. Man, you made my company a lot of money. So here's your spot bonus. And he handed him a check for $10,000. And he said, that was brilliant. You made this company a huge amount of money. So they talked for a minute. And then this man now that I'm talking to got up to walk out. And as he walked out, his boss, now this is 20 years ago, turned to him and said, by the way, who did you share your ideas with? Well, I didn't share them with anybody. You didn't? Oh, well, come back in and sit down. We need to talk. Okay. Could I see the check again? And this man handed him the check. And the boss took a check for $10,000 and tore it into pieces. And he said, listen, your job is to be smart, but your bigger job is to make our company smart. And you failed on the bigger part of your obligation. I hope you never forget this moment. And now the guy that I was interviewing said, here it is 20 years later, and I've never forgot that message. And everywhere where I've gone, I've shared that story with every individual and every team that reports to me. And that's why I've been successful. That's the kind of straightforward, aggressive, accurate feedback that managers are going to have to give their people. It's not, are you making them happy? The question is, are you teaching them to be more effective as individuals, with other individuals, and with their teams and with their whole organizations? So that's at least part of the answer.
Indeed, sir. I think actually you have explained this very beautifully, and I'm so impressed from your answer as well as the kind of energy you brought into this session. And I'm very sure that there's a lot more to learn from you, but today I don't want to take too much of your time. So moving to my last question of this conversation, actually the question is, towards the end of our conversation, could you please share some of the tips for the young budding entrepreneurs?
Yeah. That's such a great question. And I think the critical issue is to always be in a mode of thinking through the world through the lens of information. You need to think about what kinds of information do I need to have to have knowledge that's going to move me ahead of my competitors. How do I gather that information? In India, you have one of the best examples in the world in HUL, where the way they continually gather information, among other ways, is they send the story probably better than I do. They send their junior management trainees out into the remote villages and to interact in these villages with the people that live there. Now, the people that live there are living sometimes on grass floors, or not grass floors, dirt floors. These management trainees end up interacting with people they've never talked to, ever interacted with in their entire lives.
Yes.
But during that time, anywhere from a few weeks to a few months, they come not just to understand, but by the way, those villages are the key markets that HUL is trying to serve, and yet these management trainees have never interacted with them. So HUL has designed these programs where they go in, they interact with these people that are their present and future customers. And in that process, they come to have a gut level feel for what the marketplace is like that they're trying to serve. And that knowledge doesn't just enter their heads, it also enters their hearts as they work and form friendships and relationships. And that creates an intellectual and an emotional bond with their customers. Then they go back to headquarters and they're asked, so what did you learn? And they shared what they learned about future markets. So the critical issue is to be able to identify who has the right information and how do I get it. Okay. Then you need to bring that information back and it has to be shared. And I talked about the example of this financial institution where the sharing occurred. And then it has to be utilized. If you don't utilize that information, nothing else matters. Correct. So the upcoming entrepreneurs need to be constantly looking at what information do I need to have that's going to help me to differentiate myself from my competitors. How do I analyze that information? How do I share it with my colleagues, with my teams, and then how do I use it? And that process of focusing on information, especially in today's world, we don't have time to go into the full logic about information, but we live in an information age.
Yes.
So information is going to be the key mechanism through which you create competitive advantage. Tesla is probably the best example of that, maybe in the world today. But then it also takes courage. It takes the ability to take risks. It means the ability to not just listen from others, but to listen to your own heart that can tell you what your values are, what you need to focus on. Are you focused as an entrepreneur? Are you focusing on it? Are you focusing just to make money? Or are you focusing on your country, your families, and your colleagues? So there has to be a focus that goes into your heart that enables you to make the world a better place and your country a better place. So I really believe in that very, very strongly. Remember your own values, remember courage, but remember you live in an information age and you need to understand how to access, analyze, share, and utilize information better than your competitors.
Indeed, sir, this was really a very wonderful advice from your side. And I must share the viewers, those who are watching this session, they are also going to find us insightful in many levels. And so thank you so much for joining and giving your important time. And we look forward to conduct more such sessions with you in future. And please stay in touch, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harsh. It's been an honor to be with you. And I wish you and your colleagues and your audience the very best. Good luck and Godspeed, and stay safe. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone.